So let's talk about that today, and I want to share with you some of the answers that we believe we have that will account for some of this. So to dive in, what is culture? Could somebody just shout out, what do you think culture is? What is culture? Anyone?
Las formas de ser.
Behaviors. Beliefs.
Yep. It is a shared group's shared attributes, the things that they define themselves as, their behaviors and their values. So if we talk about culture change, what we're really talking about is going from old attitudes, old behaviors and old values, right, to new attitudes, behaviors and values. That's what culture change is all about. It's getting us to behave differently, to have different values, and to have different attributes. Now, I have another question for you. What percentage of culture change fails? Who's got an idea? 80%. I heard 80. Give me another number. Higher, lower? 90. 78, that's very precise. The fact of the matter is that 70% of culture change transformations fail. You were very close. You were right. 70% fail. The question we should be asking though is why? Why does that happen? And we believe we have an answer. We're with a firm called Cotter. And in 1994, the founder of our firm, Dr. John Cotter, a Harvard business professor, did some work into looking at transformations to understand why transformations fail. And what he started to look at is he looked at the biggest transformations that companies were doing. This was big merger and acquisition deals, hundreds of millions of dollars, cross-border. He was looking at big technology work, and this was 1994, so technology was just getting started, right? He looked at big acquisitions, divestitures, new product launches. And he started to find out that there were things that companies did that led them to fail, right? Why transformation efforts failed. That was in 1994, and in fact it was such a well sought out piece of research that it became a book called Leading Change. How many of you have heard about the book Leading Change? Okay, a couple of people. So in 1995, this book came out as the Bible for change. Now, we have some answers in here, but before I get to those answers, I want to share a few other things with you, because it starts here. You see, the thing is, unlike equipment and our assets that are physical, human assets change because of their brain. And so I want to share a little bit with you today about brain science, the work that we are doing around brain science, and it's not going to be heavy brain science work, but it is going to help us to understand some of the answer to that question, why? Why does culture change fail? Okay, so let's dive in. I have a question. What percentage of the body's total mass is taken up by the brain? Any idea?
90.
How much does the brain weigh relative to the rest of the body?
It's like
Small. How much? 5?
10%. 10.
10? 1? 2. So I see somebody at the back there who says 2. The answer is 2%. So well done. But how much energy does the brain consume?
40.
40?
80.
80? It's not quite that high. It's 20%. This tiny little thing consumes 1/5 of our total energy consumption in the body. Now, if you think about it, you're all in the asset management space, you understand efficiency. That is not particularly efficient, right? That's something that can weigh such a tiny amount, can consume so much of our energy. But over the years, our bodies have evolved and our brains have evolved, and we have learned how to deal with that. Now, it's important to understand a bit about the brain. Okay? The brain has 80 billion neurons in your brain, give or take a few. And these 80 billion neurons are firing all the time, right? They're making connections. They're passing information back and forward. And what it's found, what we have learned, is that the brain likes efficiency. Because here's how it works. If it's consuming 20% of the energy, and if you had to think about everything you did, it is quite possible that by 11 o'clock in the morning you would be tired because you'd used all your energy. But we can't work like that. Our days get longer, we've got so much coming at us, we've all got phones and we've got devices and we've got bosses and we've got emails and we've got husbands and we've got wives and children. There's so much coming at us. The brain has had to learn how to conserve its energy. Okay? The way the brain conserves its energy is by looking for efficiency. And one of the ways it looks for efficiency is it looks for patterns. It looks for predictability. Now, how many of you have got children? How many of you have children? Okay. If you don't have children, you know someone who's got children. Okay? I have 3 children, I have 3 girls, and my eldest girl is driving. My middle daughter is just learning to drive. Now, when she gets in the car, she sits down in the car, and she checks her mirror, and she checks this mirror, and she moves the seat forward, and then she adjusts everything, and she checks it. It's like, can we just go? But the problem is, I get in the car, I just sit and I go. I'm putting the belt on while I'm driving. She doesn't move until the belt's on. And the reason why I can do that is I'm not thinking about putting the belt on anymore. My brain has learned that that's a habit. I don't have to think about it, I just do it. She hasn't learned that yet. So she gets in, she adjusts the mirror, she puts it on because she's got all these checks that she has to do. She hasn't learned how to be efficient yet. When I brush my teeth in the morning, I don't think about brushing my teeth, I just do it. I don't go, oh, what is this thing? It's a brush? I don't think about that, I just do it. And that's how our brains have evolved to make us more efficient. So our brains really like efficiency. Think about that. When we try and introduce changing behavior, we should try and do it in a way that helps people to be efficient. Right? Now the other thing that we know is that our brains, and we've done lots of studies on this now, our brains have learned to predict things. There's a fascinating study that was done and has been repeated a few times about people who will walk into a room and they take a rubber snake, right, a toy snake, and they put it in the corner of the room. And people will walk in, see the snake and move back. They don't stop and think, is it real or is it fake? They see a snake and they immediately think that thing is real. Because our brain, in this spirit of efficiency, doesn't want to take the time to say, is that real or is that a toy? No. It sees it, it's a threat, we move away from it. So it doesn't matter sometimes if you talk about change in a really, really positive way. Some people could see that change as a real snake, even if it's not. Okay? So predictability is important, and efficiency is really important. The bottom line with all of this is that it makes it a lot easier. And so what do we do to help that in the corporate environment, in work? Well, we introduce habits. We introduce things called routines. Right? You all know about routines, especially in the maintenance space. We go to a meeting with an agenda, because if your boss says to you, come to a meeting, and doesn't tell you why, I don't know about you, but I get worried sometimes. But why? But you tell me there's an agenda, it's like, okay, I can relax now, my brain doesn't have to work so hard. It doesn't like the uncertainty. Schedules, like every Friday at 2 o'clock, we'll do that, that's good. Because if I had the schedule, I can predict and then I can be more efficient. The same with processes, that's how processes help us. But they can also get in the way and be bureaucratic. They can get in the way and hurt us. However, these are things that help us with efficiency and predictability. The bottom line is all of this is that the brain does not like change. The brain doesn't like change. So when we talk about culture change, you've got to know that you're starting with an organ that doesn't like it. Now there's something else to add on. How many of you know about this thing called conformity bias? Okay, this is fascinating. In the 1950s, a psychologist conducted a study that has been repeated around the world with men, with women, with mixed groups, with older people, with younger kids, and it's been proven every single time. What the study did is it took 7 people into a room, and the professor who led the study told 6 people what was going to happen, but didn't tell the 7th person. And what he told the 6 people is he said, I'm going to show you 2 sets of lines, and I want you to tell me that X is equal to A. Now, is X equal to A? No.
No.
Okay, it's fairly obvious, but you didn't all shout out no. But anyway, that's my point in a little minute. What happened is, people would come in, and the professor would start off and say, what is X equal to? The first person would say A. And the second person would say A. They get to the 7th person who didn't know about the study. And the 7th person would go, I think X is equal to A. And it happens 70% of the time. Why? Because we like to conform. We don't like to be different. But culture change is all about behaving differently. But we don't like to be different. Because it's clear that A is equal to B. I mean, it doesn't matter which way you look at it, X is not equal to A. So what the science tells us is that not only does our brain not like change, but human nature doesn't like change. So now you're fighting with your brain, and you're fighting with what we call human nature. The fact that no one wants to stand out. When I asked you, is X equal to, is X equal to A? Not all of you said no, but it's obvious it wasn't. So you want people to change their behavior. We've got to make it safe for them to do that. We've got to create an environment where they can do it. The last piece of this is very important as well. Okay? We have evolved over a couple 100,000 years, depending on kind of where you think you came from. And at our core, we used to have to hunt and look out for food and shelter and take care of our families. And that's what we did. And that's why when we see that snake sometimes, real or not, it doesn't matter, it's a threat to us. What happened is our brains have evolved, but you know what? We're not that smart. Our brains can't change that fast. Some of what is in our brain is hardwired. It's hardwired to make an impact on us. And it's hardwired to make us act in a certain way. So one of the things that we start to see happening more and more is the way we react depends on how we view the situation. So we grew up and we defended, like we took care of things. In our brain, our primary driver of what we did was to protect us. And lately, we've evolved into 2 schools of thinking. The notion of survive and the notion of thrive. Now, these are very important, because this is what happens when you get presented with change. Your brain, that doesn't like change, and as a human being, you don't like change, are now in an environment where I've got to think to myself, does this make me survive? Or does this make me really thrive and do better? Now let's look at how they are different. On the survive side, we see it as a threat. It's a threat to our survival. Now there may be some people, whether it's some of the processes that you're trying to implement, whether it's some of the work things that you're changing, will view it as a threat to them. Maybe people view the changing technology that's going to take their job away. And if that's going to take my job away, guess what? I'm not going to make it successful. Right? We've had 20 years now of big technology technology implementations. And what we know is that over the course of that time, one of the biggest failure areas goes back to people. Sure, sometimes we get the technology wrong, but it's not because people feel the technology is bad. They are scared of what it's going to do to them. They're scared that they have to learn new ways. And it's the same thing if you think about ISO 55000. Same thing, right? What does this mean? Why is it, how might it be a threat to me? And that's what we've got to answer. What happens though, if you think about this, if go all the way back to, I'm from Africa, so this is easy, go all the way back to Africa in the savannah, 100, 200,000 years ago. And you're running around on the savannah plains and you see a lion. Now, the first thing you think is that lion is a threat, because it is. What happens physiologically, you cannot control this. You cannot control this. What happens is that your body creates adrenaline, norepinephrine, and cortisol. These are partly brain and body chemicals that get created and you cannot stop it. So how many times when you get excited do you feel your heart starting to go like this? Yeah? You can't control that.